Alright, so this is an Aria Ultra0 run. This category, I believe, was created by RP2 Knight. And what Ultra0 means is that we're going to find a scatter trap so that I drop my shovel, my nazar charm, my potion, and then we're not going to use a bomb, and we're never going to toss the dagger. That's the ultra part of the 0%. So what this is going to do by not having a shovel isn't just that I can't dig through walls, but it means I'm going to lose my ability to buffer for enemies. This is going to be particularly important during Zone 3, where you start to see a lot of enemies that move every beat. So right now, I'm mostly being a little bit sloppy as I look for the scatter trap, since that's sort of when the run actually starts. And so I get pretty lucky that there's a scatter trap on 5-1 here, because sort of the longer it takes you to find the scatter trap, it means that you're having to go into every room in every level, which means the probability of, hitting a hard combination of enemies or just, sort of getting swarmed, particularly if you're being lazy while you hunt for the scatter trap, is higher. So happy to see that in the first floor here. Zone 5 isn't too bad because there aren't that many enemies besides the water orbs that move every beat. So this is mostly just like running low percent. One thing I should note is that I, relatively speaking, don't try to collect too much gold because I want to preserve the shop as a buffering space, particularly in Zone 3. So you'll see that's why I'm kiting the dragon here, so that he doesn't spawn the leprechaun, because I'm going to want that leprechaun for later. And not too bad. A couple of the gold mages here. Zone 3, or 5-3, I should say, is very variable with how many of those you're going to get. So this is a bit of a pain, but nothing too considerable. And then the main thing I'm starting to think about at this point is what boss order I'm going to get. I don't have a whole lot of experience with low percent runs, and so the actual zone bosses are still a little bit variable for me. Alright, so Death Metal first, which is not great. Death Metal 5's easy, but I'd much prefer to have Death Metal around as the possible Zone 2 boss, since that's probably the easiest Death Metal and one of the easiest Zone 2 bosses for Aria. I tend to just clear everything. The Beholders are a pain, and I'm not particularly worried about the spawns from Death Metal. The Electro Mages are kind of... they're fine to the extent that I'm going to get them, and I think, yeah, I do end up having one that spawns here. So an interesting thing as we go into Zone 4 is that Zone 4 is actually slightly easier on a 0% run because you can actually dig through Zone 4 walls without a shovel, and when you do, you actually only dig one tile at a time instead of 3. So this is actually slightly easier than a low percent run, since I have a really low chance of digging into multiple rooms at once here. You can control the aggro better as a result. So of course, with the sarcophagi, we'll start to see some monsters that move every beat. Of course, the Banshee also does this, but Zone 4, not such a big deal because we can dig through walls. We can still buffer for this zone. This was a little bit of a push on my part. Like, there was no reason not to take care of that skeleton, but whatever. It's obviously fine. Orange armadillos are another one of those mobs that it's sort of like, depending on the seed, very variable how many of you're going to see, especially in the later zones where they can keep spawning. Normally I would take care of it, but it's pretty obvious to me here that it's going to get trapped behind this wall, so I don't bother. That one I sort of danced with a bit. I realized I could have hit it earlier, but then just let it go to the bottom there. So, kind of a lot going on there. So I take this gold here, and I mentioned before that I wanted the leprechaun later. So I want to minimize gold, but at the same time, my hope is that this 4-3, I will spawn the leprechaun and intentionally, I mean, obviously I'm not going to pick up the lucky charm because it's a low percent run, but I will use him to steal my gold so that I'm at 0 when I get to zone 3. So that's the ideal. It's not always going to be possible, though, because you'll have instances where, say, a nightmare will spawn and take out the sarcophagi, which is what I'm relying on to spawn the leprechaun. In which case, I'm sort of out of luck. So that's why I'm both minimizing gold, despite the fact that I hopefully will 0 out here. Of course, opening up a Cave of Bats on 4-3 is not particularly fun, given how fast the song is and how spooky those guys are, but it's fine. I'm also pretty happy here not to have had to deal with any ice dragons yet. We got another Banshee, so that's fine. Also means we're in, pretty good luck to possibly spawn a leprechaun, except that the sarcophagi now has had too many spawns. So it only has enough gold to spawn the leprechaun if it's only spawned 1 monster. Here I've spawned 2, and so, of course, I'm not entirely certain of that, so I kill it anyway, realize that I can't get the leprechaun, and there we are. Fortissimo 4, mostly fine, but again, this is more of a, I'm very nervous about deep blues the further we go, because that's obviously probably one of the spookiest bosses, and only gets harder for Aria as you go. And Fortissimo's another one that's fairly negligible on Zone 3, so I much rather would have had him saved up for potential Zone 3, or Zone 2 for that matter. But, nothing off the rails here. Probably was, even being safer than I needed to at this point in terms of clearing out the mobs. Alright, so getting into Zone 3 now is when this starts to get fun. So we're going to have a lot of mobs that move every beat. It's very open zones. We have to worry about swarms, and I'm going to have to entirely buffer off of other monsters or off of barrels and carts. And sure enough, we start with a rider who is off parity with me. So I take that one out by going up to the shop here. This is why I wanted to have 0 gold, is so I could buffer off any items in the shop. Not that lucky at the moment. And we get a spirit. First spirit, something about Aria's peace effect tends to mean that it doesn't see a lot of spirits. I use the slime there to buffer for the spirit, which is why I had not killed it in the first place, is that those diagonal slimes are actually pretty nice for Aria to buffer. Not super pleased for the goblins there, and to hear that we've got Dragon, of course. In 3-1's not great, because it also preserves the possibility that we'll have another dragon in 3-3, so not super pleased about that. I'm also considering spawning the leprechaun here, but I don't have a way of buffering, so even if I do spawn it, I'm not going to be able to attack it. Nice to have a barrel down there, since that's an infinite source of buffering if I need it. A little bit spooked here by this combination of the mage and the yeti, since I don't quite know how that's going to work out. This is a lot to get at 3-2, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to die here. I at least realized pretty late that I was actually on parity with that rider, but whatever, it was sort of better to get cornered here and draw everyone in. Now we're just going to slow play, wait for this yeti to come to us. Sort of. In this case, I take out the diagonal slime because I got plenty of items to up buffer with there, so I don't need that there, and I'd rather just clear out the space. I'm fairly certain the exit's down, but I might as well clear that up top. And make sure that's not where the exit is. Off parity rider, so I go for the barrel. Obviously, I don't want to open up the treasure chest just because, there's the possibility I'll stumble into the item and break the low percent run later that way, which would be a terrible way to go. I also don't kill the skeleton corpse, of course, because on the off chance that was spawned by the sarcophagus, I want to make sure that I don't have more sarcophagi spawns. So yeah, actually quite a bit of spirits, given that you usually don't see too many there, but not too bad. So 3-3, not a huge swarm here, which is good. I've got the Yeti to deal with. I've got the Elemental, but nothing terrible. So, fairly happy about this. And I sort of understand here the exit's down, so I'm not clearing the hot dog and the slime up there just because it's sort of a waste of time. Lucky us, we have a dragon, another blue dragon, so we have to worry about the ice breath, of course. So I'm trying to get vertical to him, and this monkey's not great. I don't want to teleport. So this is getting spooky. So I've got the barrel, which is great for buffering myself, but I also have a Yeti and a dragon, and I really don't know how to deal with this. So I will admit, this is mostly luck here, and really me pulling the hat out of the rabbit that I now scoot in between the dragon and the Yeti and clear it out. Still no leprechaun for me, unfortunately. And I'm sort of just banking. Oh, nope. I was thinking about rushing to the exit with the spirit there, but had the moment to buffer. So Coral Rift 3 is good. Certainly better than seeing Deep Blues here. I had to pause at this point, which is why I'm sitting there. But Coral Rift doesn't get substantially harder as the zones go on. The tentacles just have higher HP, so you deal with a bit more of a swarm in the beginning, but it's mostly not a big deal. Though again, like, I haven't done this so often that I'm entirely confident, / at this point, like, now being past Zone 3, which is the hardest zone in this run, the nerves are starting to become real. This is also just, like, the unfortunate thing about Coral Rift is it's terribly long on low percent, since you have to wait for him to come to you 5 times. So going into Zone 2, the things that you have to start to worry about are you have more mobs that move every beat, like moles. You start to have much more variable mobs because you've got Zone 3, Zone 4, and Zone 2 mobs all in Zone 2. And then there's just lots of annoying things that the game's not designed to handle. So for example, you can get blocked by the placement of armadillos where they will be in a narrow passage. That's just, the game doesn't care about it because normally you have a shovel, so like it's not considered, unfair. And I've definitely lost runs on 0% mode to that. So there's a bit of like either having to be very clever and kite monsters around to run into armadillos that you have to worry about. But it's mostly just like the mob variability. Again, more spirits because of no Nazar charm. But this is pretty straightforward for 2-1. Like, pretty obviously headed towards the exit. Got an orange armadillo. Not super pleased by the combination of the hot dog with that, but it's fine. Could have kited the armadillo to the right there, but just decided to handle it. The low visibility is definitely more noticeable in Zone 2 in terms of having to worry about things. So I probably should have kited this all the way back to the entrance. I take the risk at just using the door to buffer, but if there had been the Minotaur at the door, I would have been completely dead there. So this wasn't exactly like the safest play. It was pretty sloppy. I do have to deal with this orange armadillo, otherwise he's going to hit me as I go for the exit. But mostly not too bad. Immediate swarming, which is good. And also, immediate shop, so I know which way to go. We've got a slightly narrow path, but thankfully the bomb mushroom takes out that spirit for me. But we do have a rider, so we do have something moving every beat, but I'm on parity, so that's not a big deal. Trying to preserve the mushrooms, that way if I have more riders, I still have these mushrooms to buffer off of, or moles or anything else for that matter. And sure enough, immediately another rider. This one I am off parity with, so I need to hit the mushrooms that I can go take him out. Now, of course, I know he's not a sarcophagus rider since they will be yellow at this point. Spirit coming at me, and I have no way of retreating. Thankfully, the bomb was there to take him out. Purple mushrooms, a bit of a pain on 1 damage, but thankfully not a problem. Gonna leave that skeleton there as another buffer mechanism. We have yet another dragon. This one, thankfully, just a red one, so I don't have to worry about the area breath, just the fireball. Mostly just going to take him very far away. I don't really need a Leprechaun at this point, I think, because it's like low odds I'm going to use the shop, but I'm going to spawn it anyway. So you see me go down to 0 gold there, just in case I need to buffer off shop items. Another off-parity rider, so we use our mushroom. And I'm like, I know the exit's right there. I actually should have just dove straight in, but, you know, better to be safe. On parity rider, I can hear the nightmare, and at least I know it's a nightmare approaching, since we just had a dragon. So I'm glad the exit's close. And thankfully there's no other swarming that I need to worry about. So it's one of the situations where, like, I kind of want to rush the exit, but then we get 2 riders and a bat. Thankfully, you know, plenty of mushrooms to buffer off of here, and that lets us handle the riders super safe. Also, like, presumably one of those is the sarcophagus, so I don't need to worry about more sarcophagus spawns as I come into the exit here. And then I completely luck out here because this is not Deep Blues, so I'm going to miss him out entirely. This is just King Konga. Give myself a second to catch my breath. King Konga 2, super easy. I also haven't played him in ages, though, on low percent, so I'm still, like, not exactly sure what I'm supposed to be doing here. Like, I think I just sort of kite this down, but then I realize, like, I'm not quite where I need to be, so I come back up. Like, I don't know if that armadillo is going to be a problem, but there it goes. So, like, I have to move up a bit, but, you know, straightforward. Konga has 5 health, so I'm just sort of cleaning up mobs to make sure that there's nothing that's going to surprise me as I get toward the end here. So I really, you know, so my PB before this was 2-3, so I don't really know what to expect out of Zone 1, except RP2 Knight giving me good advice to worry about spiders and room entrances. So again, we've got, like, very narrow playing field, so I am worried about getting boxed in by things. Also more worried about the lack of buffering objects. Zone 2 had the mushrooms at the start always, but here I'm not quite sure what to do if I run into something, and sure enough, we've got an off-parity rider. But I sort of understand now that I can use the bounce traps to help get back on parity for those. Nothing too bad here so far. Thankfully, you know, as starting to get quite nervous, it's at least the case we're down to a slow song, and I'm not rushing. So this gives me, like, a little bit of time to catch my breath. So we got 1 spider. I realize this is not the right way to go, so I don't need to worry about that at all. And come back up top. You know, Adventure Bat's not great to see. They're not fun on 1 damage, and having 1 and 1-1 means I still might see 1 and 1-3, which is not what I want with the faster beat. Of course, I take out the sarcophagus spawn only to trigger an off-parity rider. Thankfully, I know I've got a barrel down here. I just go back and forth on whether I should kill the skeleton and risk another sarcophagus rider, or just come up here and take out the sarcophagus first, which is what I end up doing, which was smarter since I was able to keep the skeleton locked below me. Now we just need to deal with this frickin' bat. Thankfully, he doesn't give me too much trouble with the running around. So I know I've got this rider over there. I don't know if he's going to be on parity or not. Thankfully, there's a trapdoor here that's going to take out the monkey. So I'm slowly clearing out this room. Understanding that I can use the blue slime to buffer the rider if I need to. So I just need to get rid of the bat, and then I can kite the rider over if necessary. And if I'm on parity, all the better. And sure enough, we are on parity here, so I just kite him a little bit. And then obviously I'm gonna leave the skeleton there, so I have another object to buffer off of if I need to. Now, I'm pretty lucky so far in terms of mob spawns. Not a lot of yetis or anything that will leave creep of any sort. Here I've got the barrel, so I have a buffer item, so I'm just going to clear out the room so that I have the most room to navigate possible with anything I find. Yeah, now is not the time to deal with getting confused by a 2-damage warlock, so I'm just going to kite him up there so I can handle him without getting confused. I recognize there could be a Minotaur, so I immediately get back, but nope, it's another blue dragon. Quite a bit of them. My assumption is I'm going to be able to handle him in this hallway here, but then we have another rider that I am off parity with, so I need to kite him all the way up so I can bring him back on parity here. And I will admit, I'm super lucky that there's just enough spaces to kill this blue dragon without having to crawl around him and potentially get frozen, because I wasn't really prepared on how I was going to navigate around him if I needed to. So that's probably the second bit that was entirely luck. Again, could have dealt with getting confused and taken him out, but we'll just come kite him to the left here. Now we're down to 1-3. Immediate Minotaur, so nice to get rid of the mini-boss. Also means I've got an exit that's very close. I don't move down there because I don't want to potentially aggro the bottom left room if I can avoid it, and I don't really know how far I'd have to move in. So, of course, we immediately trigger a spirit and a swarm from the exit room. Thankfully, I'm on parity with the spirit, and even with that being a 2 damage monkey, I have enough time to take it out before the 3 damage warlock comes at me. So what looks like it would be a super fast exit room is not quite that, but thankfully I've now taken out, I think, the sarcophagus spawn, and I can dodge right into the exit. Now we're at the loot, and my only concern is whether we have a forward rider who would ruin the fast strats. Thankfully there isn't. Not so nervous anymore, so I'm able to just, completely keep this on rails and execute a standard loot kill. And that is the Ultra 0% run. Thanks for watching.